The examination hall stretched across 3 football fields, its crystalline walls reflecting the pale blue light of Kepler station's artificial sun. 200,000 beings from across the galaxy sat in perfectly aligned rows, each at their designated testing terminal. The air hummed with nervous energy and the soft whisper of environmental systems designed to accommodate 17 different atmospheric requirements. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her breathing mask and glanced around at her fellow test-takers. To her left sat a Zephyrian, its tentacles dancing nervously over the control interface. Behind her, a massive Croton warrior's breathing apparatus made mechanical wheezing sounds. The diversity was staggering, yet they all shared one common goal: admission to the Galactic Defense Academy, the most prestigious military institution in known space. The holographic proctor materialized at the front of the hall, its form shifting to accommodate the visual spectrums of all species present. Welcome, candidates, to the final examination for Galactic Defense Academy admission. You have demonstrated exceptional physical and intellectual capabilities to reach this stage. Today's test is simple in concept, complex in execution. Elena's translator implant buzzed as the proctor continued in 17 languages simultaneously. You will observe a series of scenarios. Your task is to identify the primary threat in each situation. You have 30 seconds per scenario. Begin. The first scenario materialized in the air above them. A bustling alien marketplace, vendors hawking exotic wares, children playing between stalls. Species Elena had never seen before mingled freely. The countdown began. 30, 29, 28. Around her, candidates began inputting their answers. The Zephyrian's tentacles moved frantically. A crystalline being 2 rows ahead pulsed with different colors, apparently its method of data entry. Elena studied the scene more carefully. Most candidates seemed to focus on obvious elements: the shadowy figure lurking behind a fruit stand, the suspicious package left unattended near the fountain, the vendor whose species she couldn't identify, counting an unusual amount of currency. But something nagged at Elena. Her training as a xenobiologist before switching to military applications had taught her to look beyond the obvious. She noticed the way certain species clustered together, the subtle body language, the small details others might miss. The second scenario appeared, a diplomatic meeting between 3 galactic powers. Tensions were clearly high. Representatives from the hegemony, the trade consortium, and the free world sat around a neutral station conference room. Security personnel stood at attention. Again, her fellow candidates seemed to focus on the obvious threats. The hegemony diplomat's hand resting near what could be a weapon. The unusual reading on a trade consortium representative's bioscanner. The nervous shifting of a free world security officer. Elena studied the environmental details, the technical readouts scrolling along the bottom of the display, the almost imperceptible details in the background. Her answer differed significantly from what she suspected others were choosing. Scenario 3. A deep space research vessel investigating an anomaly. The crew moved efficiently through their routines, but something felt wrong. Warning lights blinked in the background. Computer displays showed readings that made Elena's scientific background prickle with concern. She watched her fellow test-takers input answers focusing on the obvious: potential equipment failures, crew members acting suspiciously, the anomaly itself registering dangerous energy signatures. But Elena's answer was different again. By the 10th scenario, a pattern had emerged in her thinking. While others focused on immediate, visible threats, Elena's background led her to consider systemic issues, environmental factors, and the broader implications of what she observed. The 20th scenario showed what appeared to be a peaceful first contact situation. Representatives from an unknown species had arrived at a frontier station. The local commander was preparing for formal first contact protocols. Everything seemed routine, even celebratory. Other candidates appeared to be looking for hidden weapons, suspicious behavior, or technological threats. Elena studied the biochemical readings, the environmental data, the subtle details in the alien ship design, and their physiological responses to the station environment. Her answers consistently differed from what she imagined others were selecting. When the test concluded, a strange silence filled the massive hall. The holographic proctor reappeared. Results will be processed immediately. Please remain seated. Elena noticed whispered conversations starting among groups of candidates. The Zephyrian beside her gestured with its tentacles, and what she'd learned was confusion. Strange scenarios, it said through its translator. Very obvious threats, yes? Shadow figures, suspicious packages, weapon signatures. A Croton warrior from several rows ahead turned around. Agreed. Though some scenarios showed no clear threats at all, perhaps testing our ability to recognize when no danger exists. Elena said nothing, but felt a growing unease. If the threats had seemed obvious to everyone else, why had she seen something completely different? The proctor's form solidified again. Attention candidates. We have unusual results requiring immediate analysis. Please proceed to designated waiting areas by species grouping for individual interviews. As beings began filing out, Elena overheard fragments of conversation. Test takers compared answers, and she realized with growing certainty that her responses had been dramatically different from the norm. In the human waiting area, she joined 47 other human candidates. They were a diverse group representing different worlds, different backgrounds, different specialties. As they waited, they began comparing experiences. First scenario was easy, said Marcus, a former colony defense specialist. Unmarked package by the fountain, obviously an explosive device. I chose the lurking figure behind the fruit stand, added Sarah, who had served in counterintelligence. Classic surveillance positioning. Elena listened as each person described answers that followed predictable threat assessment patterns. None matched her own observations. Dr. James Chun, a tactical specialist from the Mars colonies, noticed Elena's silence. What about you, Vasquez? What did you see in that first marketplace? Elena hesitated. I noticed that all the vendor stalls were arranged to create specific crowd flow patterns. And the children playing weren't actually playing games, they were marking territory boundaries. The real threat wasn't any individual element. It was that the entire marketplace was a carefully constructed intelligence-gathering operation. Silence greeted her response. Marcus frowned. Intelligence gathering? But there were obvious immediate threats, which were probably deliberate misdirection. Elena continued. The shadowy figure was positioned too obviously. The package was too conveniently placed. The suspicious vendor was counting currency in a way designed to draw attention. Meanwhile, the real operation was hiding in plain sight. The other candidates exchanged glances. Elena realized she had possibly failed the test by overthinking scenarios that were meant to test basic threat recognition rather than complex analysis. Hours passed before a Galactic Defense Academy officer appeared in their waiting area. Commander Thrix, a tall humanoid with crystalline features, held a datapad and wore an expression Elena couldn't read. Candidates, Commander Thrix announced, we have completed our analysis. 39 of you have achieved passing scores and will be admitted to the Academy. 8 did not meet minimum requirements. Elena's heart sank. She had probably overthought everything. However, the commander continued, one candidate achieved results so unusual that they require special attention. Dr. Elena Vasquez, please accompany me. As Elena stood to follow the commander, she caught sympathetic looks from her fellow humans. They clearly assumed she had failed spectacularly. The commander led her through corridors lined with achievement displays from Academy graduates across the centuries. Heroes who had saved star systems, tactical geniuses who had prevented galactic wars, innovators who had revolutionized space combat doctrine. They entered a conference room where 3 beings waited. Another Academy officer, a being she didn't recognize wearing what appeared to be civilian clothing, and a human admiral whose uniform indicated the highest levels of Earth's military hierarchy. Dr. Vasquez, Commander Thrix began. Please explain your answer to Scenario 1. Elena repeated her assessment about the intelligence-gathering operation hidden within the marketplace setup. And Scenario 7? This from the unidentified civilian. The diplomatic trade negotiation wasn't about trade at all. The economic data being discussed would have created specific resource dependencies that would effectively transfer military control of 3 systems to a 4th party not directly involved in the negotiations. The real threat wasn't espionage or assassination. It was economic conquest through carefully crafted treaty language. The admiral leaned forward. Scenario 15. The space station quarantine appeared to be containing a biological threat, but The quarantine protocols were actually designed to prevent the discovery of an archaeological find that would have rewritten the history of galactic civilization. The biological threat was a cover story. The real danger was information suppression. The three officers exchanged glances. Elena couldn't tell if she was about to be commended or expelled. The civilian spoke for the first time. Dr. Vasquez, in 200 years of administering this examination, we have never had a candidate identify the actual primary threats in even half the scenarios. Most candidates score well by identifying obvious secondary threats, which is sufficient for academy admission. Elena felt confused. I don't understand. Each scenario contained multiple layers, Commander Thrix explained. Surface threats designed to test basic observational skills. Hidden threats to test deeper analytical abilities. And what we call paradigm threats, dangers that exist at the systemic level, often completely invisible to conventional threat assessment. The Admiral stood and walked to the window overlooking the station's docking bays. You identified paradigm threats in 18 of 20 scenarios. No candidate in Academy history has identified more than 3. But what does that mean? Elena asked. The civilian answered. It means we have a problem. The test was designed by our most advanced military theorists using our best understanding of galactic threats. Finding obvious dangers qualifies someone for Academy training. Finding hidden dangers qualifies them for advanced tactical programs. But finding paradigm threats suggests either extraordinary analytical ability or prior knowledge of classified threat assessment models that shouldn't exist outside our highest security levels. Elena felt a chill. Are you suggesting I somehow cheated? We're suggesting, the Admiral said quietly, that you may have just revealed that humanity possesses threat assessment capabilities we didn't know existed. And that has profound implications for galactic security. The interrogation room was smaller and more sterile than the conference room. Elena sat across from Admiral Morrison, whose weathered face spoke of decades spent in deep space operations. Beside him, the civilian had introduced himself only as Director Kemal, and his questions had grown increasingly specific over the past 3 hours. Tell us about your training again, Director Kemal said, reviewing his notes. Xenobiology at Luna University, then cross-training in tactical analysis at the Titan Military Institute. Standard career progression for someone seeking Academy admission. Elena shifted uncomfortably. That's correct. Is there something unusual about my background? Admiral Morrison leaned back in his chair. Dr. Vasquez, your academic records are impeccable, but unremarkable. Good grades, solid research, nothing that would suggest the analytical capabilities you demonstrated today. So we need to understand where these abilities came from. I don't know what you mean. I just looked at the scenarios and tried to think through all the possible implications. Tried to think through implications, Director Kemal repeated. Most candidates saw a suspicious package and thought bomb. You saw vendor placement patterns and identified an intelligence operation. Most saw diplomatic tensions and looked for weapons. You analyzed economic data streams and recognized conquest through resource manipulation. Elena felt increasingly defensive. Is systematic analysis somehow wrong? It's not wrong, Admiral Morrison said. It's impossible. The level of pattern recognition you displayed requires training in classified methodologies that you've never had access to. Or what? Director Kemal consulted his tablet. Or humanity has developed threat assessment capabilities naturally that we've been trying to achieve artificially for centuries. The room fell silent. Elena stared at them. Are you saying other species can't think this way? We're saying other species don't think this way, Admiral Morrison corrected. The Academy examination was designed by a joint committee representing 12 different galactic civilizations. Our best minds, our most advanced military theorists. The paradigm threats you identified were included as theoretical exercises. We never expected anyone to actually spot them. Elena tried to process this information, but they seemed obvious once I really looked. That's exactly what concerns us, Director Kemal said. Dr. Vasquez, we need to conduct some additional tests. With your permission. She agreed, though she wasn't sure she had much choice. The next room contained equipment Elena didn't recognize. Scanners, computers displaying readouts in multiple alien languages, and a sophisticated virtual reality system. Commander Thrix operated the controls while two technicians Elena hadn't met before monitored various displays. "We're going to show you some scenarios that weren't part of the examination," Commander Thrix explained. "These are based on actual historical events. Military situations our historians have analyzed extensively. Please observe and tell us what you see." The first scenario materialized around her. She stood on the bridge of what appeared to be a hegemony battleship during some past conflict. Crew members moved efficiently, managing what looked like a standard defensive engagement against raiders attacking a convoy. Elena watched for several minutes, noting the tactical displays, listening to communications, observing crew behavior. "This isn't a raid," she said finally. "Explain." "The attacking ships are using hegemony communication protocols, but they're disguised to look like raiders. The defenders are deliberately missing shots they should be making easily. This is a false flag operation designed to justify military action against whoever they're blaming for the raids." Commander Thrix stopped the scenario. Elena could hear whispered conversations among the technicians. "Historical analysis took our experts 3 years to reach that conclusion," one of the technicians said. "You saw it in 4 minutes." The next scenario showed a peaceful research station conducting xenological surveys. Scientists from various species worked together, studying artifacts from a recently discovered extinct civilization. The atmosphere seemed collegial, productive. Elena studied the displays showing the artifacts, the research methodologies being used, the interaction patterns among the scientists. "They're not studying the artifacts," she said. "They're reverse engineering weapons technology and disguising it as archaeological research. The extinct civilization didn't die out naturally. They were eliminated, probably by whoever is now controlling this research station." Another pause. More whispered conversations. The third scenario was more subtle. A trade negotiation between the free worlds and an independent system. Economic data, shipping routes, resource allocations. Everything appeared routine. "The independent system doesn't exist," Elena said after watching for several minutes. "I mean, it exists physically, but it's a front. Someone is using it to manipulate free world's trade routes to create artificial scarcities. They're engineering economic dependency as a prelude to political control." Commander Thrix shut down the simulation. The room was completely silent now. Director Kemal entered the testing room. "Dr. Vasquez, those scenarios were selected from our most complex historical analysis cases. Military intelligence situations that required teams of experts months or years to fully understand. But once you know what to look for." "That's just it," Admiral Morrison interrupted, joining them. "Most beings apparently don't know what to look for. We've now tested representatives from 6 different species using the same scenarios you just observed. None identified even half of what you saw immediately." Elena felt a strange mixture of pride and unease. "So humans are good at this kind of analysis?" "We don't know," Director Kemal admitted. "You're the first human we've tested at this level. Until today, we didn't know these capabilities existed." Admiral Morrison activated a wall display showing Elena's test results compared to a database of other scores. "Dr. Vasquez, your pattern recognition scores are so far beyond our normal range that our testing algorithms flag them as data errors. We need to understand if this is uniquely human or uniquely you," Commander Thrix added. Over the next week, Elena found herself the subject of intensive study. Medical examinations, psychological evaluations, cognitive testing, and neurological scanning. Scientists from multiple species arrived at Kepler Station to observe her responses to increasingly complex scenarios. The results were startling. Her brain shows unusual activity in regions associated with pattern recognition and system analysis, Dr. Zentar, a Zephyrian neurologist, reported to the assembled research team. "But these patterns are consistent with baseline human neural architecture. This suggests the capability is not anomalous for her species." Dr. Sarah Kim, a human cognitive scientist brought in from Earth, added her analysis. "I've reviewed Elena's entire educational history. Nothing in her training specifically developed these analytical frameworks, which implies they may be naturally occurring human cognitive traits." Director Kemal looked troubled. "If humans naturally possess threat assessment capabilities this advanced, we need to understand why this is the first time we've discovered it." Admiral Morrison had a theory. Most human military personnel receive training that actually suppresses this kind of analysis. We teach doctrine, standard procedures, conventional threat recognition. We may have been training the natural ability out of our people. Elena spoke up from her corner of the conference room. Can I ask a question that's been bothering me? Of course. If these abilities are supposedly so unusual, how did you know to design tests for them? Someone created those paradigm threat scenarios. Someone understood these patterns well enough to embed them in examination questions. The room fell silent again. Director Kamal and Admiral Morrison exchanged a look Elena couldn't interpret. That, Director Kamal said slowly, is an excellent question, and it brings us to something we haven't told you yet. He activated a secure display. The Academy examination was redesigned 6 months ago. New scenarios were added based on intelligence gathered from classified sources. Sources we've never identified. Elena felt a chill. What kind of sources? Someone has been providing the Academy with information about threats we haven't encountered yet. Scenarios based on theoretical attack methodologies no known species has developed. Paradigm threats that haven't happened, but might. Admiral Morrison leaned forward. Dr. Vasquez, we think someone has been preparing us for threats they knew were coming. And you may be the first person to have the natural ability to see what they were trying to warn us about. Elena stared at the display showing threat scenarios she had never seen before. Each one made perfect sense to her analytical mind. Each one revealed layers of systematic deception and manipulation that most military theorists would need extensive time to uncover. Who do you think has been providing this intelligence? She asked. We don't know, Director Kamal admitted. But we think they may have been trying to identify humans like you. People with natural paradigm threat recognition. Because something is coming that conventional military thinking won't be able to recognize or counter. Elena studied the scenarios on the display. In her mind, she could see the patterns, the systematic approaches, the carefully constructed deceptions they represented. And she realized with growing alarm that they weren't just theoretical exercises. These aren't future threats, she said quietly. These are current operations. Someone is already implementing these methodologies. The intelligence you've been receiving isn't warning you about what might happen. She turned to face the assembled officers and researchers. It's trying to teach you to recognize what's already happening. Emergency protocols activated throughout Kepler Station within minutes of Elena's revelation. Admiral Morrison had immediately contacted Galactic Defense Command, while Director Kamal initiated classified communication channels Elena didn't even know existed. She found herself at the center of a crisis that was expanding by the hour. The station's main strategic operations center had been cleared of all non-essential personnel. Elena sat at a conference table surrounded by senior military officers from multiple species, intelligence analysts, and officials whose titles she didn't recognize. Wall displays showed data streams from across the galaxy, and the atmosphere crackled with barely controlled urgency. Dr. Vasquez, Fleet Admiral Chintera, a tall crystalline being who apparently outranked everyone else present, addressed her directly. We need you to analyze current galactic situations using the same methodologies you applied to the test scenarios. Real-time threat assessment. Elena felt overwhelmed. I'm not qualified for strategic analysis at this level. I was trying to get into the Academy, not advise Fleet Command. You may be the only person in known space qualified for this analysis, Director Kamal said grimly. We've now confirmed that our most advanced threat detection systems have been missing paradigm-level operations for an unknown period. Admiral Morrison activated the first display. The vegan trade dispute. 2 months ago, the vegan consortium and the Rim territories began disagreeing over shipping routes through neutral space. Standard diplomatic tensions, currently being mediated by the Galactic Council. Elena studied the economic data, shipping patterns, resource flows, and diplomatic communications. The complexity was staggering, but patterns began emerging as she focused on the systematic elements rather than the surface events. It's not about trade routes, she said after 15 minutes of analysis. The dispute is artificially maintaining shipping patterns that look economically inefficient, but are actually optimizing resource distribution for military logistics. Someone is using the trade dispute to position strategic materials where they'll be needed for a major military operation. Explain. Elena pointed to specific data streams on the display. The vegans are insisting on routes that cost them money. The Rim territories are demanding alternatives that hurt their own trade efficiency. Neither side is actually trying to win the dispute. They're both working to maintain shipping patterns that make no economic sense unless you're stockpiling for war. Fleet Admiral Chintera's crystalline features shifted in what Elena had learned indicated concern. Against whom? Where? Elena studied the patterns more carefully. The stockpiling is distributed across 17 systems in a formation that would support coordinated operations against. She paused, checking her analysis. Against the galactic core regions, including Earth. The room erupted in alarmed conversations across multiple languages before Admiral Morrison called for order. Next situation, Fleet Admiral Chintera commanded. The Hegemony Research Initiative. Elena reviewed the data about the Hegemony's expanded scientific research programs. Increased funding for xenological studies, archaeological expeditions, theoretical physics research. All appeared to be legitimate scientific endeavors contributing to galactic knowledge. They're not researching for knowledge, Elena concluded. They're systematically investigating every extinct civilization's military technology. The theoretical physics isn't about scientific advancement. It's about weaponizing technologies that were abandoned because they were too dangerous. Evidence. The research sites are all located near areas with specific mineral compositions needed for exotic matter manipulation. The personnel assignments include military specialists disguised as academic researchers. And the timeline suggests they're trying to develop something specific within the next 18 months. Director Kemal leaned forward. Develop what? Elena studied the research patterns, trying to see the underlying purpose. Something that requires materials from extinct civilizations, exotic matter manipulation, and military secrecy. Probably a weapon system based on technology that previous civilizations destroyed themselves trying to use. How can you be certain previous civilizations destroyed themselves? Asked Dr. Lyra Kay, a Zephyrian intelligence analyst. Elena pointed to the archaeological data included in the research files. Because the research sites show evidence of systematic technological destruction, not natural disaster or external attack. These civilizations deliberately destroyed their own advanced technology. The hegemony is trying to rebuild what other species decided was too dangerous to exist. The third situation was the free world's independence movement. Recent political developments suggesting several free world systems might seek greater autonomy from galactic governance structures. Standard political evolution, according to most analysts. Elena studied the political patterns, economic changes, communication networks, and social movements. This isn't about independence. It's about isolation. Someone is preparing these systems to be cut off from galactic communication and support networks. The independence movement is cover for systematic separation that will leave these systems vulnerable and unable to call for help. Help against what? Whatever the hegemony is developing and the trade dispute is supporting logistically. Fleet Admiral Chintera stood and began pacing, a behavior Elena hadn't seen from crystalline beings before. Dr. Vasquez, your analysis suggests a coordinated operation involving multiple galactic powers, using deception operations sophisticated enough to fool our best intelligence services. This level of systematic deception would require leadership that understands paradigm-level strategic thinking, Elena finished. Someone who knows how to hide operations in plain sight because they understand how conventional threat analysis works and where its blind spots are. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Morrison spoke first. Dr. Vasquez, the intelligence we've been receiving, the source that provided the Academy with new test scenarios, do you think it came from whoever is running these operations? Elena considered the question carefully. No. I think it came from someone trying to prepare us to recognize these operations. Someone who understood what was happening but couldn't reveal it directly. Why not reveal it directly? Because direct revelation would have been dismissed as conspiracy theory or paranoia. But training people to see the patterns for themselves. Elena paused. That creates genuine understanding instead of just belief. Director Kemal activated another display. We've been analyzing the source of our intelligence. The information came through channels so secure and sophisticated that only a few dozen beings in the galaxy would have access. All of them are in positions of absolute trust. Fleet Admiral Chintera's form grew brighter, another sign of crystalline distress. You're suggesting one of our highest-level allies has been secretly preparing us for a war they couldn't officially warn us about. Elena studied the data about the intelligence source. I think someone in a position of absolute trust discovered these operations and realized that conventional warning channels wouldn't work. The deception is too sophisticated and too deeply embedded. So they decided to train us to see it ourselves. But who has access to this level of intelligence across all these different operations? Elena felt pieces clicking together in her mind. Someone who would be included in planning sessions, someone trusted by multiple galactic powers, someone with access to trade negotiations, military research, and political movements. She turned to face the assembled officers. Someone at the Galactic Council level. And if they're feeding us intelligence secretly instead of warning us officially, it means they can't trust official channels. Admiral Morrison looked grim. Are you saying the Galactic Council itself is compromised? Elena reviewed everything she had analyzed. The systematic nature of the deceptions, the coordination across multiple galactic powers, the sophisticated understanding of how to hide operations from conventional intelligence methods. I think someone on the Galactic Council is orchestrating all of this. And someone else on the Council discovered it, but realized that formal accusations would either be dismissed or would alert the orchestrator that they've been discovered. So they created a training program to help us recognize the threats ourselves. Elena nodded, and used the Academy examination to identify people who might have natural paradigm threat recognition abilities. People like me who could see the patterns without needing extensive training. Fleet Admiral Chintera stopped pacing. Dr. Vasquez, if your analysis is correct, we're facing a coordinated campaign of deception involving the highest levels of galactic government, military forces, and economic systems. The scope would be unprecedented. Elena felt the weight of what she was suggesting. I know how it sounds, but the patterns are all there once you know how to look for them. Director Kemal consulted his secure tablet. We have additional intelligence that arrived this morning through the same channels that provided the Academy scenarios. Coordinates for a meeting location, and instructions for Dr. Vasquez specifically. Elena stared at him. Instructions for me? Your mysterious intelligence source wants to meet with you directly. Admiral Morrison looked troubled. It could be a trap. Elena studied the meeting details on the display. Location, timing, security protocols, communication procedures. Her analytical mind processed the patterns automatically. It's not a trap, she said finally. The security arrangements are designed to protect the source's identity, not to threaten me. And the location choice suggests someone with intimate knowledge of galactic security procedures. How can you be certain? Elena pointed to specific elements in the meeting proposal. Because everything about this setup is designed to appear threatening to conventional security analysis while actually being completely safe for someone who understands paradigm-level planning. It's another test. She turned to Fleet Admiral Chintera. I think our mysterious ally wants to confirm that I can recognize sophisticated deceptions even when they're designed to help rather than harm. They want to know if I can be trusted with whatever they really know about what's happening. The Fleet Admiral's crystalline form pulsed with different colors, indicating deep thought. Dr. Vasquez, if you're right about the scope of this threat, this meeting may be our only chance to understand what we're really facing. Elena nodded, though she felt far from ready for whatever was waiting for her. Then, I guess I need to find out who's been trying to teach us to see the invisible war that's already begun. The meeting location was a maintenance section of an abandoned mining station in the neutral zone between hegemony and free world space. Elena arrived aboard a heavily shielded intelligence vessel, accompanied by a minimal security team and enough scanning equipment to detect almost any conceivable threat. What they found instead was something none of them had expected. The station appeared completely dead from the outside, but internal scans revealed a single life sign in the designated meeting area. Elena made her way through corridors that had been dark for decades, her equipment detecting no signs of traps, weapons, or surveillance devices. The setup felt exactly as safe as her analysis had predicted. She found her contact in what had once been the station's main control room. A figure in an environmental suit sat at a restored workstation, monitoring displays that showed real-time intelligence from across the galaxy. When the figure turned toward her, Elena saw a familiar face through the suit's visor. "Counselor Valdris," she said, recognizing one of the most senior members of the Galactic Council. "You're the intelligence source." Counselor Valdris removed her helmet, revealing the elegant features of a senior Altarian diplomat. Her expression was grim. "Dr. Vasquez, thank you for coming. And thank you for proving that at least one species in this galaxy still possesses the cognitive abilities necessary to see what's really happening." Elena activated her recording equipment, then thought better of it, and shut it down. "This is about more than paradigm threat recognition, isn't it?" "Much more." Counselor Valdris gestured to the displays around them. "What you've identified as coordinated deception operations are actually preparation phases for something we call the Convergence Protocol." "Which is?" Valdris activated a secured display showing galactic maps Elena had never seen before. "A systematic plan to restructure galactic civilization under unified control, not through conquest, but through engineered dependency and controlled crisis management." Elena studied the displayed information. Economic manipulation patterns, resource control strategies, communication network dependencies, military logistics networks. The complexity was staggering, but the underlying logic was clear to her analytical mind. They're not planning to invade or conquer, Elena realized. They're engineering situations where unified control will seem like the only logical solution to cascading crises. Exactly. Create enough interconnected problems that can only be solved through centralized authority, then position themselves as that authority. Elena traced the patterns on the display. The trade dispute creates economic instability that requires emergency coordination. The hegemony research develops technologies that necessitate unified control for safety. The free world's independence movements create political chaos that demands intervention. And dozens of other operations you haven't seen yet, Valdris confirmed. All designed to reach crisis points simultaneously. Elena felt overwhelmed by the scope. Who's behind this? Valdris activated another display showing council membership, internal communication networks, and decision-making patterns. A coalition that calls itself the Synthesis. They believe galactic civilization is too chaotic and inefficient under current governance models. Members: 17 of the 23 Galactic Council members. Senior military commanders from multiple species. Economic leaders controlling significant portions of galactic trade. Scientific researchers directing major technology development programs. Elena stared at the names and organizations listed. Nearly everyone in positions of ultimate authority. The Synthesis believes they're saving galactic civilization from itself. Their models predict current governance structures will eventually lead to catastrophic conflict. They see controlled unification as preferable to chaotic collapse. Elena studied the strategic projections included in the data. Their models might even be correct. But their methods eliminate free choice and replace diverse civilization with engineered conformity. Elena traced the timeline displayed on the screens. When does Convergence Protocol reach its crisis phase? 6 months. Multiple systems will simultaneously experience economic collapse, political rebellion, technological disasters, and external threats, all carefully orchestrated to appear natural and inevitable. And the Synthesis will offer unified control as the solution. Valdris nodded. Most beings will accept centralized authority gratefully after experiencing enough coordinated crisis. Elena studied the implementation details. This level of coordination requires incredible sophistication. How did they develop paradigm-level strategic thinking? Valdris's expression grew even more troubled. They didn't develop it, Dr. Vasquez. They inherited it. Elena felt a chill. Inherited from whom? Do you remember analyzing hegemony archaeological research into extinct civilizations? Elena recalled her earlier analysis. They're researching military technologies that previous civilizations destroyed. Not just military technologies. Strategic methodologies. The Synthesis has been studying every known example of successful civilization unification throughout galactic history. They've reconstructed and improved upon the systematic approaches used by species that successfully transitioned from diverse societies to unified control. Elena reviewed what she knew about extinct civilizations. How many species achieved successful unification? All of them. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Every known extinct civilization didn't die out naturally. They were unified under centralized control, and then, they stagnated and declined. Unified civilizations apparently last longer than diverse ones, but they also stop innovating, stop growing, stop adapting. Eventually, they become vulnerable to external pressures or internal collapse they're no longer flexible enough to handle. Elena studied the historical data Valdres displayed. Dozens of extinct species, all showing similar patterns of successful unification followed by gradual decline into irrelevance. The synthesis knows this historical pattern. They believe they can succeed where previous unified civilizations failed because they're incorporating the strategic insights of multiple species rather than relying on single-species approaches. Elena analyzed their logic. They think diversity of input during the planning phase will compensate for conformity during the implementation phase. But they're wrong, aren't they? Elena studied the convergence protocol structure and methods. They're creating a system optimized for control rather than adaptation. Even with multi-species input, once the system is established, it won't be able to respond to genuinely unexpected challenges. Which is why I've been secretly training beings like you to recognize paradigm-level threats. Elena finally understood. You need people who can see what conventional analysis misses because the synthesis itself represents a paradigm threat. Their methods are so sophisticated that normal intelligence services can't detect them. Exactly. And, more importantly, we need people who can develop counter-strategies that work at the same level of systematic thinking the synthesis uses. Elena felt the weight of responsibility. What kind of counter-strategies? Valdres activated displays showing alternative scenarios. The synthesis succeeds because they understand how to hide systematic operations from conventional detection. But they're vulnerable to counter-operations that work at the paradigm level. Elena studied the proposed alternatives. You want to create counter-crises that make unification appear dangerous rather than attractive. We want to demonstrate that diverse problem-solving approaches are more effective than centralized control, especially when facing the kind of complex challenges the synthesis is creating. Elena traced through the logic. But that requires proving that decentralized responses can solve systematically coordinated problems, which is where human cognitive abilities become crucial. Elena looked up from the displays. What do you mean? Valdres brought up neurological data from multiple species. Dr. Vasquez, we've now tested representatives from every major galactic civilization using the same paradigm threat recognition scenarios you completed. Humans are the only species that consistently demonstrates natural ability to see systematic deceptions and develop counter-strategies. Elena stared at the test results. Human subjects scored dramatically higher than any other species in pattern recognition, systematic analysis, and adaptive response development. Why are humans different? We think it's because your species evolved under conditions that required constant adaptation to systematic threats. Environmental changes, predator patterns, resource scarcity, tribal conflicts. Humans developed cognitive flexibility that other species, with more stable evolutionary environments, didn't need. Elena considered the implications. You're saying other species are naturally more vulnerable to systematic deception because their thinking evolved for more predictable challenges, while humans evolved for environments where the threats themselves were constantly changing and required systematic adaptation to survive. Elena studied the comparative data, so humans might naturally be more resistant to systematic manipulation and more capable of developing counter-strategies that can adapt as the opposition changes their methods. Elena felt the full scope of what Valdres was proposing. You want humans to lead the resistance to convergence protocol. We want humans to demonstrate that diverse, adaptive problem-solving is superior to unified, controlled solutions, not through force, but through superior effectiveness. Elena reviewed the timeline again. 6 months isn't long enough to develop and implement paradigm-level counter-strategies. It is if we have enough humans with paradigm threat recognition abilities working on the problem. Elena understood. The Academy examination wasn't just testing for individual abilities. You were identifying humans who could be trained to work together on systematic strategic problems. Dr. Vasquez, we believe human cognitive abilities represent the natural counter to the kind of systematic control the synthesis is implementing. But we need to prove that human-led diverse response strategies can outperform centralized unification approaches. Elena studied the scope of what would be required. Counter-operations across multiple star systems, coordinated responses to systematically created crises, adaptive strategies that could evolve faster than the synthesis could counter them. How many humans with these abilities do you think exist? Based on your test results and what we know about human cognitive distribution patterns, probably several million across human space. Elena felt simultaneously excited and terrified. You're proposing to organize several million humans into a galaxy-wide resistance operation that works at paradigm strategic levels. I'm proposing to give humanity the chance to save galactic civilization by proving that diversity and adaptation are stronger than control and unification. Elena looked at the displays showing the synthesis's timeline, their resources, their sophisticated understanding of systematic manipulation. Then, she looked at the data about human cognitive abilities and the potential for paradigm-level resistance strategies. Counselor Valdris, if we're going to attempt this, we need to start immediately and work at a scale none of us have ever imagined. Valdris smiled for the first time since Elena had arrived. Dr. Vasquez, I was hoping you would say that, because I've already identified the first 1,000 humans we need to recruit, and we have transportation standing by to begin operations across 17 star systems. Elena realized she was no longer just a failed Academy candidate who had accidentally demonstrated unusual analytical abilities. She was about to become the first human strategic coordinator in a galactic resistance operation that would either prove humanity's value to galactic civilization or reveal that sophisticated systematic control was inevitable for all advanced societies. Counselor, what do we do first? We teach 1,000 humans to see invisible wars, and then we show the galaxy that diversity and adaptation can defeat any system designed for control. 6 months later, Elena stood in the command center of a converted asteroid station, watching real-time displays showing economic data, political movements, and military positions across the galaxy. Around her, nearly 3,000 humans worked at terminals, analyzing situations, coordinating responses, and implementing strategies that would have seemed impossible half a year ago. The convergence protocol had begun exactly as Counselor Valdris had predicted. Economic systems crashed simultaneously across 17 star systems. Political rebellions erupted in the free worlds. Technological disasters struck critical infrastructure. Military conflicts flared between previously stable neighbors. To conventional analysis, galactic civilization appeared to be collapsing into chaos. But Elena and her fellow humans could see the patterns. Economic crisis in the Centauri trade zone is being artificially sustained, reported Marcus, the former colony defense specialist who had become Elena's chief economic analyst. They're manipulating currency exchanges to prevent natural market corrections. Political uprising in the vegan system shows coordinated communication patterns, added Sarah from her intelligence analysis station. The rebellion leaders are receiving instructions from off-world sources using encrypted channels. Elena studied the overall strategic display. Dr. Chun, what's the status of the technological disasters? James Chun, now coordinating infrastructure analysis, pointed to specific incidents on the galaxy map. All 17 accidents involve technologies that require centralized management for safety. They're creating technological dependencies that justify unified control. Elena felt proud of how quickly humans had adapted to paradigm-level strategic thinking. The training program Valdris had designed, combined with natural human analytical abilities, had produced a resistance network capable of recognizing and countering sophisticated deception operations in real time. What's our effectiveness rating? Elena asked. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a computational strategist from the Jovian colonies, consulted her analysis displays. Synthesis operations are achieving 63% of their intended psychological impact. Our counter-operations are reducing effectiveness by an average of 37% across all targeted systems. Elena nodded. The numbers meant that populations experiencing orchestrated crises were significantly less likely to accept centralized authority as a solution, because human-coordinated responses were demonstrating that decentralized problem-solving could be more effective. Incoming priority communication, announced Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications station. Counselor Valdris, encrypted channel. Elena accepted the transmission. Valdris appeared on the secure display, her expression tense but hopeful. Dr. Vasquez, we have developments you need to know about immediately. What kind of developments? The synthesis has realized their operations are being systematically countered by strategies they can't predict or understand. They're accelerating their timeline. Elena felt her stomach drop. How accelerated? Final convergence phase begins in 72 hours instead of 3 weeks. Around Elena, human analysts looked up from their stations as the implications sank in. 72 hours to counter operations that had been planned for months. Counselor, that's not enough time to implement counter strategies for their final phase operations. I know, but there's something else. The synthesis has made a critical error. Elena leaned forward. What kind of error? They've concluded that their operations are being countered by another paradigm-level organization using methodologies they don't understand. They believe they're facing a coordinated resistance from an extinct civilization's strategic AI system. Elena stared at the display. They don't know humans are behind the counter-operations? They don't believe any current galactic species possesses the cognitive abilities necessary for the kind of strategic thinking you've been demonstrating. So they've convinced themselves they're fighting an external threat rather than recognizing natural resistance from existing galactic civilization. Elena understood immediately. They're going to reveal themselves. Tomorrow, the synthesis will make a formal presentation to the full Galactic Council. They'll claim that galactic civilization is under attack from an unknown paradigm-level threat, and that emergency unification under their control is necessary for survival. Elena studied the implications. They're abandoning subtle manipulation for open power grab, which gives us 72 hours to prove that human-led diverse responses are more effective than synthesis control. Elena looked around at her team of human analysts, each one representing capabilities the rest of the galaxy apparently couldn't imagine. Counselor, what exactly do you need us to prove? That humans can solve the crisis situations the synthesis has created faster and more effectively than centralized control could. We need to demonstrate superior problem-solving in real time, in front of the entire Galactic Council. Elena felt the weight of what Valdris was proposing. You want us to publicly counter every synthesis crisis operation simultaneously, live in front of galactic leadership. I want you to show the galaxy what human strategic thinking can accomplish when applied systematically to complex problems. Elena turned to address her team. Did everyone hear that? Nods around the command center. Dr. Chen spoke first. Elena, we'd be revealing human capabilities to the entire galaxy. There's no going back from that. Marcus added. And we'd be betting everything on being able to outperform sophisticated operations in real time. Sarah looked up from her intelligence displays. But if we succeed, we prove that diversity and adaptation are stronger than control and unification. Elena studied the faces around her. 3,000 humans who had discovered abilities they hadn't known they possessed, who had learned to think at strategic levels no one expected them capable of reaching. Dr. Tanaka, can we solve all current synthesis crisis operations simultaneously? Yuki consulted her computational models. If we coordinate properly and utilize everyone's analytical capabilities optimally, theoretical success probability is 87%. And if we fail? Galactic civilization gets unified control that will probably work efficiently for several centuries before stagnating into extinction. Elena considered their options. Accept gradual decline under sophisticated control or risk immediate failure attempting to prove that human cognitive abilities offered a better alternative. All right, we have 72 hours to prepare the most complex strategic demonstration in galactic history. We're going to prove that human analytical abilities can solve systematic problems better than unified control. The next 72 hours blurred together. Elena's team worked continuously, developing integrated solutions to economic manipulation, political deception, technological sabotage, and military misdirection. They created real-time response protocols that could adapt faster than the synthesis could counter them. When Counselor Valdres contacted them on the morning of the Galactic Council session, Elena felt as ready as possible for an impossible challenge. Dr. Vasquez, are you prepared? As prepared as we can be for publicly demonstrating human strategic capabilities to the entire galaxy. The synthesis will present their evidence of external threats and propose emergency unification. Then, I'll request that they demonstrate their superior crisis management abilities by solving their own created problems. Elena nodded. And we'll solve the same problems faster and more effectively using human-coordinated diverse approaches. In front of representatives from every major galactic civilization, Elena looked around her command center one more time. Humans at every station, ready to demonstrate cognitive abilities the galaxy didn't know existed. Counselor, win or lose. After today, the galaxy will never see humanity the same way again. Dr. Vasquez, after today, the galaxy will understand what humans are really capable of. The Galactic Council session began with the synthesis presentation exactly as Valdres had predicted. 17 council members displayed evidence of systematic external threats, coordinated attacks on galactic stability, and the necessity of emergency unification for survival. Their presentation was sophisticated, compelling, and completely convincing to conventional analysis. Then, Counselor Valdres made her counter-proposal. If the synthesis believes their unified control approach is superior for crisis management, let them demonstrate by solving the current galactic crises in real time. And, to provide comparison, I propose we allow an alternative approach to attempt the same solutions simultaneously. The synthesis leadership, confident in their superiority, agreed immediately. Elena activated her command center's connection to the Galactic Council chambers. Council representatives, she said, her voice carrying to every member of galactic leadership, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing a human strategic analysis consortium. We will demonstrate alternative crisis resolution methodologies. For the next 6 hours, the galaxy watched something unprecedented. The synthesis, using their sophisticated centralized control systems, worked to resolve the economic, political, technological, and military crises they had created. Meanwhile, Elena's team of humans used decentralized, adaptive, pattern recognition approaches to solve the same problems. The results became clear within the first hour. Human strategies adapted faster than synthesis systems could adjust. Where centralized control required hierarchical decision-making processes, human networks shared information instantaneously and modified approaches in real time. Where unified systems followed predetermined protocols, human thinking developed novel solutions that addressed underlying causes rather than surface symptoms. By the end of the demonstration, Elena's team had resolved every crisis situation more quickly, more thoroughly, and more efficiently than the synthesis's centralized control methods. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. Counselor Valdres addressed the assembly. Representatives, you have witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. A species demonstrating natural paradigm-level strategic thinking capabilities that exceed our most sophisticated control systems. Elena added, Council members, humans offer galactic civilizations something the synthesis cannot. Adaptive diversity that grows stronger when facing complex challenges rather than requiring simplified control for efficiency. The vote was unanimous. The synthesis's emergency unification proposal was rejected, their coordinated operations were officially condemned, and humanity was invited to establish formal strategic consultation relationships with every major galactic civilization. 6 months later, Elena found herself back on Kepler Station, but this time in the office of the newly created Human Strategic Analysis Institute. Through her window, she could see ships from across the galaxy arriving with complex problems that required the kind of adaptive thinking humans had proven they possessed. Dr. Chen knocked on her door. Elena, we have requests for analysis assistance from 17 different species. Economic optimization, political mediation, technological innovation challenges, and military strategic planning. Elena smiled. James, 6 months ago I was trying to get into the academy. Now we're teaching the galaxy new ways to think about complex problems, and proving that diversity and adaptation really are stronger than control and unification. Elena looked at the requests on her desk, each one representing challenges that would help galactic civilization grow stronger and more flexible rather than more controlled and stagnant. You know what the best part is? She said. What? We've proven that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our military capabilities or our economic systems. It's the way we think. It's our ability to see patterns, adapt to new challenges, and develop solutions that no one expects. Elena activated her workstation and began reviewing the first strategic analysis request. It was a complex political situation involving 4 different species, economic pressures, technological disputes, and cultural misunderstandings. To conventional analysis, it would seem impossibly complicated. To Elena, it was just another interesting pattern to understand and another chance to prove that human cognitive abilities could help make the galaxy a better place for everyone. She began her analysis, knowing that somewhere in the complex data were connections and solutions that would help galactic civilization remain diverse, adaptive, and free. After all, that's what humans did best: spot the real danger and find ways to solve problems no one else could see.